I would tell people to do is look up all of the different, like Google them, look up all the different lead platforms that are out there. Try to focus on the seller ones first. Try to generate the seller leads. Buyer leads will come.
Welcome to the MegaTeam Mastermind podcast, the ultimate resource for real estate team leaders who want to take back their time, scale their profit, and love their business again. I'm your host, Jon Tiller. For almost 25 years, I've been building real estate teams with a focus on making an impact and leaving a legacy. And I want to help you to do the same. In each episode, we have dynamic conversations with industry powerhouses, mega team leaders, coaches, and other thought leaders who are shaping the future of real estate teams. You'll discover the secrets to effective leadership and team building so that you can leverage your business to make an impact and to leave a legacy, all without sacrificing your family. This podcast is brought to you by MegaTeamMentor.com, where you can get a free detailed assessment of your real estate team's health, including a free customized scorecard that will quickly and objectively diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of your real estate team business. That's MegaTeamMentor.com for your free real estate team health assessment. Now, let's get started on the journey of growth, impact, and legacy building with today's episode. Welcome back to the MegaTeam Mastermind podcast, where we interview successful real estate mega team leaders who will inspire you by sharing real-world stories of success and failure, building profitable real estate teams that make an impact and leave a legacy. I'm your host, Jon Tiller, and today we have my good friend, Jon Campbell from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Jon is owner and CEO of the Jon Campbell team at Real Broker. He has the #1 real estate team by production in Pennsylvania. He is the Real Trends #5 real estate team in the country. He's got 17 years of experience, and he has his team sold 1,900 homes last year for $585 million in volume, and that at an average sales price of $290,000, way below the national average, and with only 22 agents. I just can't wait to share with you guys today what Jon has to say. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You bet, man. Hey, why don't we start off this is crazy for most people to think that with 22 agents, you've sold almost. So last year was actually a down year, like it was for many of us. Your team has sold as many as 2,600 homes a year, I think I've heard you say.
Yeah, we were in the 2,600 range and then 2,300. So yeah, I've definitely surpassed 2,000.
Yeah, and so over 2,000, and you're one of the most humble guys that I know, a humble implementer for sure. And so just kind of give us a little bit of the backstory. Where did you come from before you were in real estate? And then kind of what was your real estate journey? And I have to add, because I missed this in the intro, his family is just amazing. Jon is focused on his family, focused on his business, and makes the integration between the two work really well. So I can't wait to talk to you about that either. But if you'll just start us off with the key parts of your story and tell us about your journey.
Yeah, no, and when you said 17 years, I was like, holy smokes, it really is 17 years, which actually surprised me. Not surprised me, but it's probably why I'm getting all my gray hairs and all that fun stuff. But anyway, so before this, I was actually in high school. So I started out, so I never went to college. I never did any of that. I actually took a year off of high school, actually got my real estate license in high school, and was taking night classes at our local real estate school. And then got into actually flipping houses right away. So I was flipping houses. This was in 2007, 2008. And then the great bubble of the real estate market crashed. And honestly, it was hard and came from a lot of failure with some of the home flipping going on. I had to move back in with my parents. Honestly, it was kind of a nightmare. And then what happened was I joined Keller Williams in 2000. Well, I was licensed with them in 2007, but it really wasn't until like 2008, 2009 when I really started saying all right, I have to do something. I have to sell real estate now. fixing, the flipping was good, but at the same time, I need to start selling houses. And so joined Keller Williams, and I actually joined Keller Williams as a buyer's agent on a real estate team there. And so I joined a real estate team, and I learned a lot of lessons as a buyer's agent, learned how to actually show properties. I knew how to do all the other stuff as far as like fixing and flipping and doing that, but I didn't know how to like truly show homes. And so I learned how to show homes, all that. And then I met a man named Don Wenner, who was at Keller Williams. And this guy, who was a kid at the time, so I was about 19 years old. He was 20, 21. And he was just a rocket ball. Like he was just listing homes like crazy. He was building a pretty big, not big team, but a small team, but very laser focused on just marketing and lead gen and all of that. And I just watched him from the sidelines. I was still a buyer's agent on another team, not his team, but watched him. And we were kind of like the young guys at this office. Real estate back then was a very old man's business. It almost felt like a lot of people's second careers. And we were just doing that. And so he left, formed an independent real estate company. And I left in what 2011, left Keller Williams. By that time, I grew a pretty sizable business as far as like just doing transactions. And then I left there and I became an independent agent at his independent brokerage. And when I got there, it was interesting to go from like a class A office to honestly, it was kind of a rundown office, but it felt like home. The people there were incredible. And I started to learn what an actual culture was, like a true culture was within a team. And so was an independent agent there. And then he was one of the first people, and I tell this story a lot because it really resonated with me. But he was one of the first people to actually ask me, like, hey, what are your goals like in your life here? And I sat back and I was like, whoa, that's deep. I've never really gotten that question before. And he kind of helped break down goals with me. And so he was like, hey, I have a suggestion. Let's go on a couple of appointments together, and I'm going to teach you how to just run all my listing stuff. So I was like, okay. So anyway, shadow him, did all this, and started listing homes. And the first one literally was just thrown out there. Reminder, I was an independent agent, so I knew how to list homes, but I just didn't know a process. Like he literally went into a property, opened up a computer, pressed play, and it was him talking to the consumer through a video, through a computer, and he was with them in the table, like across the table. And I was like, what is this? And I started to realize that like he'd run on 4 or 5 appointments a day. And I was like, whoa, this is different than what I was doing. I was running on like 2, 3 appointments a week. And this guy's running like 4 or 5 a day. And he's like, okay, you get the idea. You run the show now, as far as like all the listings. So I started taking on listing appointments and just pressing play, just pressing play. And so at that time, I started to realize what a process was, what a process was. So now I have goals in my head, like mindset. Now I start to understand what a process was. And fast forward a few years, 2017, and the reason I know this date so well is my first son was born. He's 7 years, or he's actually 8 now. He just turned 8. And he approached me. He said, all right, hey, I want you to be a sales manager. And I said politely, no. My pipeline at the time was 80 some listing. I had like 88 active listings. I had 40 some deals under contract. And that was just individual. Like that was me personally. And I was like, politely, no. And they said, okay, well, he took it away from me. He goes, well, I guess I have no choice. I'll go find somebody. And I sat back and I said, wow, I said no. And I was like, but what am I actually getting into? So I talked to my wife at the time. I always say this is weird. I talked to Megan, my wife, and she's like, "You should do this." So I was like, "All right." Came back to him. I said, "I'm going to do this." To be honest, I took a step back from an income standpoint for sure. At that moment, I
Sure.
started doing that, and I really got thrown into it. I was like, "This is weird." He's like, "No more production. We're not doing any production." And he's like, "Hey, you're going to be the sales manager. Like, you're going to lead them, like, teach them your ways, what you do all day long." So I started to do that. And I got humbled by that because I was not a leader of people. I did not know that at all. I did not speak in front of people like I did. I just was like a killer. Like I'd go in, I'd get the deal done. I'd be very good at one situations, was not good at group training, all of that. So I started to learn things. I read books, like I see all those books behind you, became an avid reader, or actually listener, I should say. Audible became my best friend. And I started to really learn that. And so fast forward last year, he approached me and said, hey, I think it's time for you to own own the business. And he goes, you've been really running this the last 7 years. I haven't really given you the road or the way to run it as like a true entrepreneur, like with your name, do all the videos in that. He goes, I want to give you the keys to that. And so I took that on last year and then became owner and CEO. But it was really all those lessons along the way from literally being a buyer's agent on another person's team to literally running a P&L, running a CEO, running marketing, and doing all that, and tons of lessons learned and still learning in different roles. But it was really the mentorship and really what I call like continuous development, the drive to succeed, the drive to like do something better that really ended up me being in the position I'm at now.
There's so much there to unpack. What an amazing story. The way that we actually met was through Don, and I had enrolled in some investment coaching with him, and he put us together. And I came up to visit with you guys a few years ago, and you were just totally open with everything that you do on your team. And it's just, you said this a couple of times while you were learning kind of under Don's mentorship that there it's just different there. Like there's the systems and the process and the culture. It was an example for me of how you can do it all and have it all as a leader, have a team. Your team, the team members that I witnessed, they actually they like each other, like they
Yeah.
hang out, and they're excited for each other's success. And at 22 agents selling 1,900 homes a year, you do the math, you have several agents that are doing over 100 homes, 100 home sales a year. And I think what's fascinating to me as you just shared your story was that you were self-described not a leader, because it is a
Mm-mm.
big difference. There are a lot of
You
us
can learn it.
who
Yeah.
we learned from somebody on how to get great at selling real estate, and then we got great at selling real estate, and then we hit a wall when we tried to take that next step. So give me a little bit more, if you would, if you could expand just a little bit. So 2017 comes around, you've got 88 active listings, you've got 40 under contract, and Don says, hey, it's time for you to start leading. And you trust him enough because he's helped get you where you are. That makes sense. But still a big deal to take the income setback, because sales managers don't make as much as sales killers, right?
Hmm.
And so,
That's fact.
but you took that on.
Mhm.
Why did you take that on, and what were some of the best resources that you had to learn about leadership? You talked about audio, about listening to books. Who are some of the best influencers for you? If I'm a guy listening now and I want to become that better leader, I'm a killer in sales, but I want to become a better leader, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so a lot of things there.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of tell you how I did it. So one of the things that really hit me was my wife told me a few years later after I took that manager job, she goes, I just want to let you know things were not going good when you were like in sales. And you have to realize that I didn't know that. Like I had my blinders on to that because I was so like when I say laser focused, like laser focused on converting leads, like sun up to sundown. That's all I knew. That's literally all I knew. All I would do is study sales books. I would read Grant Cardone books. I'd read Chris Smith books. I would read, what's his name, Jones. Anyway, I would read so many different sales books because I wanted to know the edge. I wanted to get the edge. I wanted to get the edge. And then when I took that sales manager job, what happened was that was 2017 and my world opened up completely. So one thing that started to happen was I started to get into other rooms. So yes, Don helped pave that way, but it was the other people that I surrounded myself, which I didn't do. So when I was in sales, and I haven't sold a house since 2017, FYI, when I got in this when I was in sales, all I cared about was everything I just talked about. But when I got into leadership, Don forwarded me an email. He said, "Hey, you should go to this event." And to be honest, I forget her name, but it was in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm up here in Pennsylvania, so I flew down there, and it was weird to me. Like they were talking about goals and different things, and it was a whole different conversation. And then, but that's what got me hooked. So then I started seeking out other rooms. So then I met Jon Cheplak. That was in 2017. Went to one of his events in Las Vegas. He's a very big, like, well, not a big guy, but very big coaching program now. At the time, he probably only had like 40, 50 people in that room. He was a very small player. But it wasn't just him, it was all the other people in that room. And I start to understand what true networking is. And what I love about that room in 2017, many of those people now are team leaders, are CEOs of their own companies, and they're good friends of mine. And so that's when I start to learn what collaboration was, like what collaboration truly was within the ecosystem that people are willing to share. Like when you're in a small market and you're sales driven, you think that you can't share anything. You think everybody's going to take your stuff, and that's just not the case. And so I started to really learn what collaboration was through that. So then I just got very hungry of like, all right, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I speak to somebody? So one of the best books I read on speaking was Stand Like Lincoln, Speak Like Churchill, or
Right. That's
I'm
it.
probably
That's
getting
what it's
that
called.
wrong.
Yep. Yeah, it's a
Probably
great
getting that
book.
wrong, but Google it, you'll find it. It was an incredible book because I did not know how to speak in front of people. I did not know. So it was like those little nuances like that. I read a book called The Game by Neil Strauss. Very not real estate and not PG, FYI. It's actually a book, it's a pickup artist book about like it's bad. Like, but it gave me so many different ways to look at things of like how to network with people. I'm still a natural introvert. I didn't know how to network with people and like put myself out there. So that helped me get over that. There was little things like that I started to just like what was my weakness and what do I need to do to counteract that? And I would research it with books and podcasts and YouTube videos at the time. And because podcasts really actually didn't exist back then, but YouTube and books. And I start to really understand that. So then you had to start to understand the team dynamics. So like John Maxwell would help me through that. The five dysfunctions of a team. I honestly forget who wrote that book,
Patrick
but
Lencioni.
Patrick Lencioni. That was one of
Great
the
book.
best books I ever not wrote, read with that. So it's like little things like that. And it's funny as I was going through my Audible list the other day, and I still have all those books in my Audible account. They don't go anywhere.
Right.
And it's funny to see because you can do from like newest to oldest. And it's funny to see all my oldest books being like very sales driven, like mindset and sales driven, to then in the middle parts of my career, like very managerial and sales management stuff, to now I'm reading books of like how to be a better father and how to be a better person overall and how to make a bigger impact on things. And so it's just funny to see that evolvement, but it all comes down to just you have to get in the right room. You have to get in the room and be open, ask questions. Don't be afraid of that it sounds stupid because that's what people think sometimes. Like just put yourself out there. Put yourself out there.
That's there's so much wisdom in there about getting in the room, and there's really no excuse. We could have tried to make excuses back in the old days when Audible wasn't around or YouTube
Yeah.
wasn't around. And at the same time, there's still value even with every digital product out there. There's still value in literally physically being in the room. And
Oh
so I
yeah.
love that you're like, hey, there's this lady speaking in Jacksonville. I'm going to get on a plane. You
Mhm.
and I have been to a lot of events together. Neither one of us is afraid to get on a plane because what we learned, it used to be harder when our businesses were smaller and it used to be more sacrificial than it is now. But now it's more sacrifice of time. And
Yes.
we have to be really careful. Everybody has to be really careful with our time. And those events where we can get in the room from people we know we can learn from, there's just no excuse not to do it. And what it does is it puts us in the top 1% or fraction of 1% of people who are doing just that. I can't tell you how many stories of small town mega team leaders who there are many of them
Mhm.
who you do think that, and in fact, I don't know if it's a generational, I don't know, but I know that there was a scarcity mindset when I was developing my teams, and it took me a while to shift to that abundance mindset.
Mhm.
And the way that I drew the logical conclusion was that there are people aren't going to implement based on the idea. It's implementation and execution that so many people get the idea and only a handful actually implement. And there is room for everyone. So I love that
Mhm.
that's all part of your story of building one of the top teams in America, the top
Mhm.
team in your state for many years running, one of the top teams in America for many years running. So much good stuff there. So, what do you do now on the team? What is your current role in the business, and what are your functions there? And also, tell me about your business superpower. What is it that John did? John kind of came to the game
Yeah.
doing well and has tuned that up.
So it's a couple of things. So right now, what my main focus on is systems. I'm making sure that our systems are running at top speed. And what I mean by that is you cannot run on so many appointments. You cannot close as many transactions without a support team and a system overall. So right now, we're always dissecting that. Real estate is always changing, especially in the brokerage world. So I mean, when I was 17, 18, 19, I mean, there were short sales and they don't exist anymore. Well, I mean, they're there, but they're not a big player in the game. And so you're always constantly, so that's what I'm doing right now. You have to be a rainmaker. You have to be generating leads from that. So I'm constantly checking on vendors, seeing what the vendors are best out there, adjusting our own marketing, our own videos. You have to adjust with the times. You can't just sit back and hope that it's going to continue to work because it will change. Something that worked yesterday might not work today. And I see that all the time. That's where that collaboration at the top always helps, where people can share different things in different parts of the country. But at the same time, I'm constantly breaking systems, helping systems, and then also just you have to be, especially at the top, you have to be that rainmaker of lead gen to support all those agents. If you don't have that, they're not gonna follow you.
Mm, mm. That's what a critical piece to what you're doing now that you can really choose to do whatever you can make the most impact on. So, what
Mhm.
is your business superpower?
It's a good question. So to me, the superpower really comes down to the people. Because one thing you don't know about our team, but might know, is they all came from 90% of them came out from outside the real estate industry. So when you bring a good driven person, somebody that literally will come to you and they have drive, they want to learn, they have the respect, they have our core values of what we're looking for, and they're coachable, you can really mold them into anything as long as you have the systems in place. So we're blessed that we've been running systems for many years. We're adjusting those systems all the time. So we can plug people in and give them an incredible career as long as they take action on it. And so as long as you can find that driven, coachable, likable person, you really can turn them into anything. We wouldn't be anywhere, I wouldn't be anywhere without our people that are there because they really, we call it ownership mindset. And it's funny, I was talking to one of our team members right before this on a one-on-one, and she's just like, I'm so proud of like what we do and what I do. And I really feel like this is my company. And that's what she literally said. And she's been with me 7+ years. And she's just like, I feel so happy when like we fix this or I can be a part of this. And it's really that ownership mindset that you don't get at a lot of, but they want to be part of that bigger vision that we have.
So when you're hiring, you're checking for core value fit. Your
Oh yeah.
tell me about why 90% come from outside of the real estate industry. Tell me why that was important to you.
I'm just gonna say it. Most failed real estate agents are a failed real estate agent because they don't have that drive. They say they do, but they don't. So I'm not saying that they don't exist because they do. They definitely do. But I've found that there's a lot of people that will just want to leave and try to figure out the next step. And they're always just switching brokerages. I see it all the time. And they're just waiting for something to like be handed to them, or they think that there's a magic pill somewhere. There's not. It's all within you. That's why I always search for that. So I usually don't go after other like real estate agents that way. And again, not putting any shade on that, but that's just the reality that I've seen. Sometimes we'll run literally like sales manager ads and you get like a hungry salesperson that's looking for the next step. And you actually get a great human being that's looking to just get out of that other industry that they might just be burnt out by. And you can provide them a path in real estate. I've had flower salespeople, I've had car salespeople, I've had you name it. And at the end of the day, they just want to sell. And it's like, yeah, if we can provide that platform and all that support of everything, they're gonna excel for sure.
So how do you, if you do hire them, have you ever had where there's a bad hire that
Oh
just didn't work out? You
yeah.
thought that they were right. You thought that they
Oh
had the
yeah.
drive. You thought that Patrick Lencioni, the guy, the five dysfunctions of a team guy, he wrote a book called Ideal Team Player. And he
Mhm.
says, I hire based on people being, the ideal team player is humble, hungry, and smart, which
Mhm.
smart being emotionally intelligent. But even though you run them through, whether it's assessments and interviews and your hiring process, even if you got it dialed completely in, and then somebody comes in and they just don't have it, or they're just not doing what they need to do. What is your do you talk a lot about systems, which is
Mhm.
awesome. So is there a system to manage them out? Is there a process? How does that work?
There is, I mean, the team will let you know. So it's like a mini family, or not even mini, it's a family here. So what ends up happening is pretty much where you're at. I mean, yes, we have systems that tell your conversion rates and how many appointments you're in on it, and all sorts of like just number driven stuff. But you'll know real quick whether you're part of that or not part of it, based on your actions, because they're all so driven. And if you're not that way, you're not gonna be able to run with the pack.
And so, do you find that those people end up self selecting because you've got such a strong culture of winners that
Oh
are
yeah. So
with
not only do
drive?
they self-select, some of them just come to me and be like, yeah, we can't keep up. Or we give them the action items that they need to do, and we realize that, oh no, they're not doing that. So yeah, we can't. You have to get rid of that quickly.
Now, tell me about you. You've built this laser focused, high production per agent team versus having more agents with lower per agent productivity. Tell me about
Yeah.
why that is.
I chose that because one, as a CEO and owner, I believe in profit first. And this is how we're built. Like, this is how our system is built. We're not built for like, hey, let's recruit 300 agents in, start to top grade them, meaning that we're going to just remove the bottom 20% over and over. We're not built for that. So honestly, I just had no interest in getting into that space. I'd rather be smaller, hungrier, do just a more profitable business and make sure people are leading, like impacting lives. Like I'd rather have that than just fill a room up and have 300 people and hope that they make it, hope that they do all of this. It's just not something I'm interested in building. Because I've had people pitch me that. I've had people come to me and like, why don't you just scale this at like
Sure.
agent level like that? It does not make sense in our system.
Got it. So there's no plan to grow to a larger number of agents. It's let's keep this tight, high focused, laser focused group, and
Yeah, now we've
that's
done
what
this in
works
other
in your culture.
markets. So I am in multiple markets, but that other market team is like three people. Like they're
Gosh.
laser focused. They're all
Wow.
laser focused. So not to say that we're not expanding, because we are, but yeah, we're not gonna grow into like your traditional like couple hundred agent brokerage, things like that.
You're growing more laser focused, high production per agent agents.
Correct.
Not, you'd rather, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds
Mhm.
like you'd rather have one agent who does 100 transactions than 100 agents who do one, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
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 and I've heard all the pros and cons of that. I
sure.
understand our risks of that.
Yeah,
Some people fear that, all right, what happens when that person leaves and all of
yeah.
that. And I get all of that, but at the same time, this is our mission. Like this is our vision. This is what we want to do.
So how does I mean, you've been doing this a long time. So
Mhm,
if that risk was going to shake out, you've done it through strong markets and through
mhm.
slower markets. And so how do you, I'm guessing your culture mitigates that risk. Like that's
It
your kind
helps.
of
Yeah.
built-in risk mitigation. How do you have people leave?
Oh yeah.
And if so, is it like, does it dramatically hurt your business? And how do you recover quickly?
So yes, we have people leave. Be foolish not to say that. And we've had some of our top people leave and form their own brokerages and all of that. But again, it comes down to that system. So when you can plug and play and move people around and be able to insert player A back into this spot, you basically give that next person that opportunity to really shine. When you're really driven and you're that like salesperson and you want that next shot.
Yep.
And so what happens is, yeah, it's just kind of like a step up type of mentality. And I've had that. And some of it is, yes, they've left and formed their own brokerages and done all of that. And when honestly, we still remain friends to this day, still collaborate with different things. And I've also done it where I've taken a buyer's agent, turned them into a listing agent, turned them into out of production listing agent. And now they're buying homes and they're investing with us. And they're still on our team. And so you always need to understand your agent's goals. You always need to understand what their next step is. And if you can't provide them that next step, well, of course, they're going to go find their next step. So, like in the case of one of our agents that left to form his own brokerage, we didn't have that next step. Like, he's
Mm.
not going to form his own brokerage under like our current model. So we had to part ways with that. But at the same time, that person that was like, all right, I love listing homes, but I really want to take that next step. I really want to like start investing in properties. Great, we have that in-house. So let's build that, let's get that done and let's move on.
The most there's so much wisdom in that, both systems and process to recover if for whatever reason they do want to move on, and then but also making sure that there are goals and career path for everybody that's well communicated, that hey, you'll never have to leave here. You're gonna be, if I understand your personal goals as your leader, and I can give you opportunity to meet those personal goals, why would you ever leave? And I know over the years in my businesses, I've had people who they just needed to do their own thing. There was just a
Mm,
time where even if I did have a career path, I certainly didn't do everything right. But if I did do everything right, they still would have gone because they needed
mm,
to do their own thing and they wanted to have, their own firm or their own team. And for me, and I know you see it the same way, that's a trophy on my mantle. That's
mm,
somebody who got their start with me, and I was able to be along the journey with them, part of their journey, but not the whole
mm,
journey. And it's not going to ruin my business. It's not going to
mm.
ruin your business if our journey isn't together forever. So
Yeah, I'm
I
proud of
really
them.
love that.
Yeah.
You're proud of
Yeah.
them. That's exactly
And
right.
we've had people leave and then unfortunately like they realize what it's like to
Yeah.
try to run it and then they come back and we still have open arms with them and but yeah, so I've seen it all. I've seen it
Well,
all.
and
Yeah.
it's about, and this is where we talk about impact and legacy a lot. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make an impact. You're trying to help
Yes.
them leave a legacy. Your legacy is their legacy.
Mm.
Watching your fruit grow on their trees is a great way that a friend of mine has said it. And what a great way to run a
Well, I know
business
there's
and
always a
sleep well
personal
at night.
side behind it all because I've been in that shoe. I've seen my family life change. I've seen different things. So it's like I know what you don't know everything that people are dealing with behind the scenes, but you know, as long as you're a good leader and you're asking them personal questions and you get to know them, you should know what's happening in their personal life. So we involve their kids, we involve their family, we involve their spouses, we know their pets' names and things like that. You need to be involved in that. If you think they're just going to work for you and you think that they're just going to do anything and you have no interaction with them, that I have no interest in. And honestly, what's the point? Exactly.
Yeah, so good. So you have this super strong lead generation focus.
Mm,
We talk about abundance mindset. And so I think there's probably a few listeners who are like, man, I wonder like, what is that marketing tool that's driving his business and what is working for him? I bet he won't share it. He's the big guy and he's not going to share that. But I know your abundance mindset.
yeah.
What's been your best lead generation tool, unique selling proposition, process? Like, what's been the biggest needle mover for you and your team lately when it comes to lead
Mhm.
generation?
Yeah, so people ask me this question all the time, and I give this answer all the time. And it's not to avoid things, but I say it this way is it has to be everything. And what I mean by that is you have to explore every lead gen portal, like every single one. And the reason I say that is because we're here in Pennsylvania on the east side of Pennsylvania in Lehigh Valley. And what works in my market might not work in your market from like a portal standpoint. I've also had people give me different lead portals, and I'm like, they're like, these are the best things since sliced bread. And I'm like, this has been terrible for us. And so the reason I say that is because if I start just giving one, it might not work in your market because I've been through that where I've been giving lead sources and I'm on them for 30 days and I'm like, no, this is bad. So I always tell people explore every option. I've always been taught this, like turn over every rock, just look at those opportunities. So like I've had people that tried radio and completely failed at it. Radio is actually very good for us, but it's because we have a strong relationship with our actual endorser. So that matters. So there's like little things with that. I've had people crush it on Zillow. We do a good job at Zillow, but honestly, our spend is only like $2,500 a month. It's very low, but we have Zillow. You have all these different platforms, but what I would tell people to do is look up all of the different, like Google them, look up all the different lead platforms that are out there. Try to focus on the seller ones first. Try to generate the seller leads. Buyer leads will come. They will come naturally to you. I don't want you to overspend on buyer leads because internet buyer lead really look for like seller generated lead opportunities. And those companies are out there. And then what you do is you sign up for them. You give them 30 days. You track them. If they tell you to sign up for a year, say no, especially if you're new to this, say no. If you do, you'll be locked into something, and honestly, it could not be a good return for you, and you can't get out of it. And that could ruin, it literally could ruin your business. That's why I don't drop names like that. It could be a business ruiner because I've just seen it. And so always look at any seller lead gen. Make sure you have at minimum a 30-day kick out clause like that you can get out of it. Believe me, if they say they can't, they can. You just have to keep pushing. They want your business. And then do what we do is email your database consistently. You have to get a message out about yourself, about your team, about a market update. So what we do is we do a market update every single month. We send them something about the community every single month. We send them something about what's happening in the real estate world every single month. We send them actual houses every single month. And when I keep saying every single month, what that turns into is weekly content. And that's what you need. You need a piece of content every single week. And if I say it that way, it becomes overwhelming. They're like, I can't do a piece of content every single week. Well, you can do a market update every single month. That gets pushed out maybe every Monday or every Friday or every Wednesday. Whatever you choose, that's up to you. And then it's like, yeah, if you just walk through a house as a simple video tour, and again, it doesn't have to be complicated, just shoot it on your own phone, walk through a home, explain just like you would be a buyer. You do that once a month. And guess what? That's another week of your email. So you just have to dumb it down that way. But when you start to build your database that way and do that, and then host open houses and get free leads from your listings, your business will start to compound. And that's what we always look to do. There's a book called The Compound Effect. Read it. I forget, I'm really bad with author names, but it's called The Compound Effect. It will change your business because you're going to start to stack things. And as you start to do that, your business just compounds. But you have to do it the right way. You have to do it the right way.
So much wisdom there. So much wisdom. Let me ask you one thing back to the paid lead
Yeah.
generation. You said don't sign a year contract. Make sure you have a
No.
30-day kickout clause. But if it doesn't work after 30 days, that might not be enough time. What's the amount of time that you give on average? I'm sure it depends on what the source is, but
On
what's
average,
the
it's
amount of
90
time where you
days.
just didn't give it long enough?
Yeah, 90 days is typically what our real number is. 30 days, meaning like you'll know pretty quickly
Right.
if it's like just absolute trash. And
Sure.
so if that's the case, do not overspend. Like
Yep.
get out of there. Like
Yep.
30 days in, you'll get a good feeling. If you're 30 days in, you're like, well, some worked, some didn't work. That's actually good. So it's like, hey, like let it run 90 days, see what starts to happen there. If you're like, oh, this is bad, you'll know it. Like I can't explain that feeling, but you'll know it pretty quickly.
One more question about leadership before we move into some hot topics that we're all dealing with right now. Your biggest leadership mistake that you've learned and the lessons that you've learned from it.
Since my audience is a team, if you let somebody be a cancer in your organization, I don't care if they are a top producer or a bottom producer. If they're a bottom producer, it's natural for somebody new at leadership to just get rid of them. That I get. It's rare though, or it might be a hard conversation to let a top producer go. That's a cancer. You need to get rid of that. It will ruin your culture. It will ruin everything that you've built. You have to get rid of that cancer.
The
You can't avoid that conversation.
Yeah. So what are the symptoms of the cancer? What are the side effects of the cancer in the organization when you're like, hey, I'm not sure I can afford to lose their volume. They sell 100 homes a year. I don't know if I can lose their volume. What are
Extreme,
the
yeah, real simple. It's extreme selfishness at the end of the day.
Mm.
So I don't know when this podcast will go out, but the Hungarian Grand Prix. So I'm a big F1 fan, and Hungarian Grand Prix just happened on Sunday. And I was watching the race, and F1's gotten excited again because Max Verstappen's not winning every single race, even though he's my favorite driver. So there was two McLarens, and they were at the top. And the one guy, he's I think second year in racing, Oscar Piastri. And Oscar was winning the race, and he was legit winning the race because he started out, I think, in second or third pole position, and he shot out to the lead. He gained the lead right away, and he held that lead. And Norris is second guy there, but Norris is known a veteran of the sport, and yet I think he's second in points for the whole entire championship. And one thing that was really interesting to me is the team, the McLaren team, pitted Oscar first, who was the guy in the lead. And because they pitted him, it allowed Norris to be in first. They then pitted Norris a couple laps later. His pit time was faster, so he came out and he was still ahead. And so what was interesting to me, because of that team call of that, it did flip-flop them.
Right.
So in the middle of that race, or towards the end of that race, is probably like three-quarters of the way through, they radioed into Norris and they said, "Hey, slow down, let Piastri pass you." And he says, well, this is his reaction was, he goes, "Well, tell him to catch up." And so that lap after lap, they asked him, they said, please, like in different ways, they're like,
Right.
slow down, let him through. And then I actually printed this out. I gotta read this. The boss finally came on the thing, and it was
Radio.
probably like two or three laps left, and I might be wrong on that, but it was towards the end of the race, and he said, "The way to win a championship is not by yourself, it's with a team." And then he came on and just said that, and there's about two or three laps that were silent, and he slowed down, finally let him through and let him win the race basically because of the team orders. And that always reminds me of like, especially because these are mega teams, these are teams that are tops of the tops. You cannot do this alone. Not only from the team leader standpoint of like collaborating with other team leaders across the country, happy to always collaborate with anybody, just like I've done with you personally, but you cannot do this alone. And if you have somebody in your organization, in your team, like in your team, I get it. If they're an independent agent and they're doing their thing, let them do their thing. Like let them like do whatever they're doing. Like if you have an independent agent side and a team side, that's fine. Let them do their thing. And we have that. We have other independent agents that we just like, yeah, you can come to our trainings, you can do whatever you want, but you're not part of the team. Just do your thing. And it's because you have to protect that team culture. And so if they're that selfish, yeah, you'll notice it. You'll notice it. And the
Yeah.
team will let you know.
Yeah. And the team doesn't succeed. The individual looks great,
Mhm.
but maybe for a minute, but then the
Mhm.
team doesn't succeed and that cancer spreads.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good, man. So good. We're always, as leaders, we're always the last one to know that we were supposed to let that person go. Like everybody on your team, I promise
They
you, team
know.
leader, if you are listening to this and you're thinking of a name of a person on your team, everybody else on your team is waiting for you to let that person go. And
Correct.
so have the courage, do it, and get rid of the cancer and get your team healthy again. So, yeah, great advice. Okay, so one last thing, we're running a little bit over here, but I really want to talk about it's what's happening right now. So, there will be a little bit of a delay on this podcast. It's now kind of end of July, and there's this big thing happening in the industry with the NAR settlement. And Jon, your team has always been very proficient, has been seller focused, mostly on lead gen. But like you said, buyers come along with that, and you
Mhm.
do some buyer lead gen. The what do you how are you preparing your team for the new world, whatever that looks like? I think we all know that it's going to change. We don't know
Mhm.
exactly how it's going to change, although it's coming into focus a little bit. How are you preparing your team to deal with the new world related to the NAR settlement?
Yeah, so the good thing is my team is already trained on like getting buyer agency contracts, getting all that. But so I'll speak to it like if you don't have this really trained up. So what you really need to do and what thing that we're continuously breaking down and figuring out is like what is that conversation going to be? So I'm blessed because we have a team of inside sales agents. So like when a lead comes in, it's our inside sales agent that's highly trained, that's picking up that call first, booking that for our agent. So one of the conversations that we're having as an inside sales team is, all right, we can't just coming up in the new year, I call it, is you can't just like set that appointment up for a showing. There has to be that. Well, that is not normal in the consumer's mind. So it's like, how do we educate the consumer of that? How, like, what words do we use that's common English for that consumer? Because if you say buyer agency contract, well, people freak out when they hear contract. They freak out when they hear things like that. So you have to like dumb it down for them. So simple things to say is like, hey, the law has changed. Has anybody ever like gone through what it's like to buy a home in this market today? And if you can just switch your language up like that and then make it a normal process, because it's going like you're forced into that normal process now, but you have to educate the client. So a couple things that we're doing right now to prepare for that, because unfortunately in Pennsylvania, I don't think we have our forms yet from the state. So I'm waiting on those to come in to know exactly what we're dealing with here so we can train. But a couple things that we're doing is we're booking in-office appointments for buyers. We call it CETO, a come into office appointment. So we're booking in-office appointments to walk them through what it's like to buy a home in today's market and the future market that we're about to see. The other thing that we're doing is I'm making personal videos because you as a leader need to be active on this is you need to educate your database. So one thing you need to do is start to make videos. People like videos. You have to make, and I'm not talking like an hour long video. Like, no, like give them a short clip. This is what's happening. This is why we have to do this. And you're not going to educate everybody because people will come to you naturally just through your marketing channels and they're not educated already. But you need to get that content out to your own database, onto your social media, and you have to use as a resource to then educate people. So if you're on the phone with somebody, you can say, hey, I'm going to send you a quick video while we're on the call. I want to make sure I have your email correct. Great. Here it is. Boom. You send a YouTube video. Maybe it's a minute long of you explaining what's happening in the real estate world. Reference actual real world things like the actual, what do you call it? The department. I don't even know the terminology in that,
Sure.
but you have to reference that stuff then to be able to educate that client right away and let them know that you're the real deal. If you do those items, you will stay way ahead of the curve and people in your market will not be able to keep up. They don't know what to do,
Love it. It
unfortunately.
reminds me, John Maxwell says leaders go first, right? And so to get ahead is is kind of the big message that I hear you talking about, and an education first approach. And our
Yeah.
challenge in this is educating certainly during the transition, trying to get ahead of it before that call comes in to see a house. But then when that call comes in to see a house, what do we do different? Setting the appointment, so we have a buyer strategy session, not a consultation, not a presentation, but a buyer strategy session to align, find out what their goals are. And I love your question there. It was, has anyone shown you the law has changed? Has anyone explained the new process to buy a home for you?
Yeah, they're all gonna say no.
Right,
And
right, which is the perfect transition, right?
It really is. Because I don't care what question they ask. They might ask, like, what's your commission? Oh, our commission is negotiable. It's always been negotiable in this real estate world. It's a cadence of conversation. So we call it ARP, acknowledge, respond, and pivot. I learned that from a man named Chris Smith down in Orlando, ran one of the number one mortgage companies in the world, or actually was the top salesperson at one of the number one mortgage companies. And you have to pivot into that next question of what that is to control that conversation. And one thing I want to add, like you said about being a leader, is I've told my team about this like 2, 3 years ago, to be
Yep.
honest. Like I was like, hey, this is a thing. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but I just want to let you know this is a thing.
It's a thing.
And to be honest, I didn't know when it was gonna break down. And then all of a sudden, what was that, March or something of this year,
Yeah,
it really came down.
yeah,
And then, but the good thing is, it was not a shock to my team. And I wasn't like I was talking about this every week, but every year, every 6 months, every
yeah,
quarter, I would just make mention of it. Hey, this is where this thing is at. This we don't know what's going to happen with it. And then I think, again, I forget the exact date. I think it was like March or something around there when it really bombshell happened. I was like, my team wasn't shocked. They were like, all right, here it is.
there
What are
you
we
go.
doing?
There you go.
So,
Yeah, it's a situation where we have an opportunity because we've got to up our game as an industry when it comes to explaining what we haven't explained for years, which is really the probably the biggest factor that's gotten us here is there hasn't been clarity in the marketplace to the consumer about how it works. And now this has been forced on us how it's working. And so big opportunity for those of us who decide to get out in front of it and be the voice to the consumer on that. So, hey, one last question. We have a common friend named Lloyd Reed, and Lloyd says that don't give up what's valuable, meaning your business, for what's priceless, meaning your family. You talked about a little earlier on, Megan, your wife, she informed you of something when
After the fact,
after
yeah,
you had gotten out of production. She said, hey,
shocked me.
that really wasn't working. And you weren't really the person I need you to be. Is that a fair summary of what she said?
Exactly what happened.
And so how do you make sure that, because I know you love her deeply, I know you
Mhm.
have great kids that you love deeply, and you want to model a great marriage for those kids. What do you do today to make sure that you never go there again?
You have to be present. It comes down to simple stuff like that. And I'm still working on that, to be honest. 'Cause sometimes, yeah, things get distracting. You're on your phone or whatever. Just simply being present with somebody, whether it's your team, whether it's your family, whether it's your wife, whether it's your kids, is crucial. And read a book called 18 Summers. It really hit home with me. I do know that author, Jim Shields. Met him, incredible guy. And you have 18 summers with your kids. And that's in short what that is. And so I have a stepson. He's 19. He'll be 20 in September. And it really hit me the one day when he turned 18. And my actual son, he was 6 or 7 at the time. I was like, whoa. When I met my stepson, he was about 5 or 6 at the time. And I realized that, like, oh, that's real. Going 18 summers, being 18, that 12 years went by pretty quick. And so I refuse to let that happen. I refuse to let that happen. So honestly, that's where not a lot of my focus, but half of it at least is in that, like, hey, what can I do to better my team, better my situation? Because it's going to impact my family even more, where we can give our kids those opportunities that, frankly, I love my parents, but we didn't really have growing up on that. So you're always trying to make an impact on that. And so I've been super focused on that to the point where, like, I still want to go to real estate conferences, but I will take them with me so that we can experience things. I don't need to go to all the happy hours anymore, all of that. I'd rather take them with me to a great place, to something that we can explore together, where it's like, yeah, they know daddy's here for some business stuff, to do real estate stuff, to do other things, but I'm going to involve them in it. And so that I've grown and really come to love and been blessed to really provide that to them.
What a wonderful way to intentionally integrate your family and your business life. It's an example for us. Jon, so many examples for us that you shared today. Thank you for joining us on the show. Where can people find you if they want to follow up with you?
Yeah, I'm the worst at social media, but yeah, look me up, Jonathan Campbell. You can go to our website, jcteam.com. That's where you can find just our website. And yeah, just look me up, send me a message. I'm a very humble guy, and I do self-describe that because I've had many people come to me and were like, hey, you impacted me on this. And that really keeps me going. Like that drive really, I appreciate that, and I just want to help more and more and more people.
Well, Jon, from somebody who's benefited from your leadership, thanks for the impact and the legacy that
Right
you're
back at
building.
you, my
Super
friend.
grateful.
I've really appreciated it. Yeah.
You bet. Super grateful for your time investment today. Thanks so much, Jon.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the MegaTeam Mastermind. I hope you found some nuggets of wisdom that you can use to leverage your real estate team to make an impact and to build a legacy. A huge thank you to our incredible guest and, of course, to our sponsor, MegaTeamMentor.com, where you can get a free detailed assessment of your real estate team's health, including a free customized scorecard that will quickly and objectively diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of your real estate team business. That's MegaTeamMentor.com for your free real estate team health assessment. If you enjoyed the show, I would consider it a personal favor if you would subscribe or leave us a review so that we can get this podcast out to others who want to make an impact and leave a legacy. I hope you'll tune in to our next episode for more leadership insights, strategies, and stories of success and failure. Until then, this is Jon Tiller, and as always, I'd like to speak an ancient blessing on you as we go. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.